Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Deraney, and I'm your host. William, it's so good to see you.
Morning, Drew. Good to see you as well.
Thanks so much for coming on. Been long awaiting this, so I want to quell my anticipation because I've been waiting. So you know what? I know you're into so many new things now, and I know you had gotten to mindset years ago, working with men too, a long time, well, before it was the thing to do, because God knows men
Yeah,
need help right now.
late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah,
So
that impressed the heck out of me. So, in this, I want to talk about. I want to be able to capture the essence of William Grace Frost in this episode, and so I'd like you to reach back in your life and think of some of the moments and challenges you've gone through growing up that have led you to where you are in that nonlinear fashion that life is, and we'll start from there.
all right, all right. I would describe myself in the past as having been a slow learner.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the insights that I've gotten have not come through a lot of ease. I think of it as having a lot of whacks over the head. It took a tough learn, it's like a
Yep,
2x4 over the head to get me to really wake up to the
I
next
got it.
level of my development or whatever. Um, it was a long journey. I mean, I think it's important to say that, I grew up in the 50s and 60s,
Mhm.
stereotypical rural upbringing, distant, emotionally repressed father, a good man, but, didn't have any emotional intelligence at all.
Right.
Quiet, dutiful mother, just very traditional kind of
Mhm.
thing. And, it was a generation of, boys don't cry. Showing your feelings is weakness. The way to deal with emotions is to either stuff them or tough it out. And
Right.
I was an athlete also. And so, I got a lot of that same kind of reinforcement there. My dad's favorite saying to me about feelings was, a man never shows his feelings on his sleeve. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that meant or where he got that from, but the idea was stuff it, don't
Right.
show anything. It's
Absolutely.
not what a man does. Problem was, I was a really sensitive kid. I had
Mhm.
lots of feelings.
Right.
And so, since they weren't really allowed, it wasn't safe at home to do that. So I had to
Mhm.
suppress them as
Right.
best I could. So the short story is I turned to alcohol, as many young people do, and it wasn't until my late 20s that I took a big whack on the head. It took getting fired from a job, dumped by my girlfriend, finally got help and got sober when I was about 28.
Wow.
So I was first introduced to group work or emotional intelligence, during treatment and in my first AA meetings
Mhm.
where people were being authentic, they were being honest. And,
Right.
it really freaked me out at first. It's like, I can't believe people are being that vulnerable and sharing that
That was
kind of
probably stuff you were
information.
craving for years. That type
Oh
of
yeah, it was a
community.
great relief. It's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
incredible relief at
Right.
the same time,
Right.
and it gave me permission to get honest myself.
Yeah.
So, and then in those early days of sobriety, I was introduced to Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence. I
Yes.
read Robert Bly's Iron John. Became aware of the men's movement. In the mid 80s, I was exposed to men expressing their feelings
Wow.
and being okay with it.
Sure.
So, that was the first big transitional time.
Okay.
So then, I started the traditional route. I got married. I got another degree. I had three sons. I wrote a master's thesis on nurturing creative behavior,
Mhm.
and that led me into the world of group facilitation
Okay.
and coaching. And I was a hungry learner. I took every certification course I could find. I went through a handful of leadership programs. I developed a wide tool belt and deep of knowledge and techniques. And I did really well with that. I made a lot of money and I became a workaholic. It's like went from the alcoholic to the workaholic,
Right,
right?
right.
Uh, so it took another whack on the head, another 2x4. I woke up disillusioned with the emptiness of being at the top. I really made it to the top of my business. And
Yeah,
I ended up leaving the business, having what I think of as an emotional breakdown,
yeah,
ended in a bitter divorce, became a single dad of 3 young boys, and really midlife crisis.
yeah.
Classic, unsure of who I was or where to turn. I briefly considered suicide. I was really depressed, but I found my way into a men's support group
Oh
instead.
gosh, great. Did you ever
And
think
and
about the alcohol piece again, or were you able to?
during that divorce time and all that upheaval,
Yeah.
I actually started drinking again for about
Oh, good.
6 to 9 months or so,
Hmm.
and then my current wife, woman, came along, and I was very fortunate and found a good woman who wanted the best for me. And
Yeah.
she didn't judge me, but she just looked at me. She said, "I know you used to be sober. Do you really want to be drinking?" And I looked at her and I said, "No, I guess I don't." And I stopped. And so
Wonderful.
now it's been another 20 years of
God
of
bless. Okay.
of
Wow.
sobriety.
Take this. Yeah.
But
That God sent somebody into your life who was meant to be there for you.
Yeah, I think of that as the biggest grace. I mean, I've had a lot of grace in my life where I feel like I've been given gifts that, in my own mind, I didn't deserve.
Right.
Obviously, I did deserve them,
Yeah,
but
of course.
we all do. Um, but when we got married, in my second marriage, both my wife and I took the middle name of Grace.
I
So
was gonna
she's
ask you.
Kiana
I
Grace
love that.
Frost, and I'm
Okay.
William Grace Frost. Yeah, I changed my middle name to Grace.
I love that. That's awesome. Wow. So, yeah, I have a question for you. So, I grew up in the 80s, and so I was unaware that there was that men's movement of it's okay to show your feelings. So, uh, what happened? Why didn't the that stuff in the 80s like carry through to now? Because
Well,
the
it
struggle
has
now.
carried through to now.
Why haven't I mean in your well, you know what it is? You were in that community for this, so it was there. But people like me now didn't know that community existed. Like, why wouldn't I know it? Because I wasn't looking for it, I guess.
Yeah, they say the teacher shows up when you're ready.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
Yeah,
so either you're not looking or you're not ready, or maybe there's men who don't need it.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, because I
I
mean,
don't
other
I
other
don't
men
know
I
it. I don't know any of them personally.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. But yeah, there are
Uh,
people who've told me, Drew, it's been there. Men have been helping men, and I just didn't know that,
yeah, yeah.
and I could have used it.
I I've been part of the national or international group called the Mankind Project. I don't
Okay,
know if you're familiar with that
you
or not.
mentioned that to me, and I did look. I did read a little about
Yeah, it's been around 30 some years or something or other. But a small group of men looked around at the US and said, what's missing and why are men so kind of messed up and
it. Yeah.
angry and, creating problems in the world? And what they came to was the lack of the rites of passage
Mm,
movement from when a young man moves through puberty and into adulthood.
yeah.
Um, there's no real taking him by the hand by adult elders, elders in the community, and saying, "You're ready to be a man. We're going to take you now out into the wilderness for 3 days, and you sit there by yourself, and then we're going to teach you what it is to be a man. And when you come back into the community, you're going to have a name, you're going to have a purpose, and you're going to have a group of men to support you
Hmm.
in growing into your own mastery." So they started a weekend rites of passage program for adult men.
Wow.
And then they realized there needed to be ongoing work with that. So they started what they call integration groups or I groups. And I've been a part of one of those I groups since 2007. So every single week, just like as if I was in AA, and this is my AA support, if you will,
Right.
is I sit with a group of men who are honest with each other, vulnerable with each other, sharing feelings, and doing transformational work with each other to be better men, better fathers, better husbands, better sons, better lovers, better whatever.
Wow.
So it's there, and it's in lots of different cities. You can find it.
Mhm.
Just go to mkpusa.org, and you
Okay.
can learn more about it and see what's locally available. Um, and I think of it as just being my rock. It's my Monday night rock in my week, and I stand on it, and I stand on the shoulders of all the men who have come before me, who have stood in circles like that for ages. And we stand strong so that young men can stand on our shoulders and
No, I
pass it
agree. I
on.
mean, we all need a community like that, and the youth now, especially, with what happened with the pandemic, and you're seeing so many youths who were on lockdown and not be able to
Mm.
be
Mhm.
who they were, and girls and boys, and the ramifications, the mental health ramifications, we haven't even seen them yet.
No,
We've
I
seen
don't think
just
we
the
can even imagine them.
no, no. I mean, there are
Don't
my
really
two
know.
boys definitely were affected negatively from it. One was class of 2020 in high school,
Mm.
robbed of that whole thing, and
Mm.
even my
Mm.
daughter was in eighth grade. She was robbed of her graduation. I had middle son,
Mm.
baseball canceled for the high school year. It was
Oh.
it's those kind of things, but we all need support, William. I'm telling you.
I probably would have turned to drinking and drugs a lot
Oh
earlier if
gosh,
I had,
I'm telling
don't
you.
I don't want to put that in the world that's what's going to happen to those kids, but I just can't
No,
imagine myself losing that at
absolutely,
that time. It was
absolutely,
so important to me.
absolutely. So, as you got older, did you get a chance to talk with your dad about feelings, emotions as you learned all this stuff and knew that it was out there and it's okay, it is okay? Did that ever happen?
I, I did. A couple different things happened with my dad. My dad was a drinker. I considered him a working alcoholic. He got up and went to work every day, and managed a life. And from the outside, nobody would think anything different. But um, I asked him to come into a therapy session with me somewhere when I was starting to wake up in my late 20s,
Hmm.
and he came to be with me, and I had a list of 10 things that I wanted from him.
Hmm.
And my therapist helped me, make that list and then ask him and said, I want you to, when I call on the phone, I want to be able to talk with just you without mom on the other end.
Mm.
I want to have a correspondence. This is pre-computers.
Yeah, right, right, right.
So, I want to get letters from you. I want to be able to write back and forth. When we come together, I don't want to shake your hand. I want to hug. I
Oh,
had learned to hug by then,
oh,
um, I want you to stop smoking. I want you to stop drinking. I want you to take a vacation with just me. He and I had never spent, like a week together, just the two of
oh,
us. And
okay.
the last thing I asked him, and by this time I'm tears just pouring out
Of
my
course.
eyes. I'm just sobbing, and he's sitting there very stoically. And I said to him, "And you realize I've never seen you cry?" And he was quiet, and he looked at me and he said, "I'll be damned if you ever will." And my therapist broke. He was great. He broke the energy of the moment. He says, "William, your dad's real clear about that." Uh,
Oh my
and
God.
and and here's the great thing is that I got 9 of those things that I asked
You did.
for.
Okay.
And the last one, he passed before I ever did see him cry.
Wow. Hey,
Um,
9 out of 10, man. that
Yeah, but
speaks
the last
volumes.
10 years of his life, he died early at 75.
Oh boy.
And from 65 to 75, he stopped smoking and stopped
Good.
drinking. And it opened the door for us to have a connected, emotionally centered relationship. And
Beautiful.
it wasn't perfect,
Sure.
but I got more from him in those 10 years than I think I did in the previous 50 or whatever it was. Um, and yeah, I was able to mourn the loss of him
Hmm. Right.
in that current stage
Right.
rather than
Right.
mourning having never had a father,
Absolutely. Well,
that
I
I connected with.
give you a lot of credit for being that courageous, because that was courage, William. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure you had an expectation of what the response was going to be, and
I had no idea,
no,
really.
you didn't.
Yeah,
Oh, it was good you did it with
yeah,
the therapist there.
yeah, yeah,
Therapist broke the ice, man. Sometimes humor is such a blessing, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me more about the group work and what you're doing now. You had a few transitions since then, and I would love to hear all the different transitions you've had and what you're doing now.
One of the big transitions was moving out of the corporate work, and really took about 6 years off, primarily to be at home with my three sons at the
Mhm.
time,
Great,
which I'll never regret having that time with
that's
them.
great.
But the divorce was bitter. It really put schisms between myself and my sons, um, and within myself as well. A lot of deep questioning about who I was and why I'm here and such. And it was around that time that I did get into the Mankind Project.
Hmm.
And that was a huge shift for me because I now had this regular group of men that I could sit with. And because I moved like 5 times to 5 different cities around the country for
Hmm.
various reasons. And there was a group of MKP in every one of those
Every
cities.
city, that's
So
great.
within a week of moving to a new place, I had a group of men that I could call brother, and they welcomed me, and all of me was welcome to show up. My shame, my fear, my grief, my joys, everything, all the ugliness of, and it was all welcome. And I
You
think,
mentioned at one point you had those suicidal ideations. Was it during the divorce period,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
men's group where they were able to help you?
I turned to 2, 3 really good friends
Good.
at that point. I was not part of the group at that time,
Okay.
but I turned to some men who I could, and two of them just let me sit in their arms and cry.
God bless them. That's awesome.
Just the grief. And actually, my very first therapy session way back in my early 20s, when I was trying to get clear of who I was at that point, I walked into the therapist's office. I told him my name and started to talk, and then the tears started to flow. He sat on the floor, put me in his arms, and for 45 minutes, I just cried, and just the grief just poured out.
Of course.
And one of the greatest blessings of that, aside from what I got from it at that time, was that I learned how to hold another man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of the things that when it's appropriate and when it's needed, when a man needs to express his grief, I have absolutely no issue whatsoever having him sit in my arms and
Of
hold
course.
him
Yeah.
just like a baby boy,
Yep.
would, and stroke his hair and say,
Yeah.
reassuring
Yeah.
things to him
Yeah.
without any fears of homophobia
Of
or,
course.
any of that other stuff going
Right.
on.
Right. Right.
Just pure love.
Yep. I mean, my dad was always a hugger, even though he wasn't couldn't speak his emotions. He was very uncomfortable speaking emotions.
Mm-hmm.
He showed his love by saying "I love you" and the big hugs. It was always a hug. I don't even ever remember shaking my dad's hand.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
it's
that's
the same
beautiful.
happens with my boys now. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a hugger, man, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's something
Well,
about it,
I've
man.
taught my brothers, my adult
Good.
brothers, how to hug, and the rest of my
Awesome.
family and my sons. I now have five sons. My wife had two sons, so
Oh
we
wow,
have
that's
we have
great.
five boys
There you
together,
go. That's awesome.
and hug them all. You know.
Yep, of course, of course. So tell me about some of the work you're doing now, or
Yeah,
that transition out of corporate, or whatever you think the audience might learn from or
yeah,
grow from.
yeah. Well, I realized that the group facilitation and all the coaching tools and everything that I had, I could, launch my own business
Mm,
and do that on my own. So um, I started doing with like retreat like groups because
right.
I really love the in-person and having a circle of men witnessing a
Hmm.
man's transformation is
Hmm.
incredibly powerful.
Hmm.
And there's no way for shame to live in a group of men.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
if a man is looking down and feeling shameful and all, I suggest that he tip his head up, open his eyes, and look into the eyes of the men around the circle, and that it like it shines a light on that dark place, and it's not able to exist anymore. So a lot of the work that I do now one on one is, unfortunately it's on Zoom. But I still do the same kind of work with individual men, where what we're really working at doing is trying to change behavior on the surface. But in order to do that, what we're looking at is what is the underlying negative thought forms
Hmm.
and things that I've been telling myself for much of my life, probably mostly unconsciously,
Hmm.
but getting at what those are, what we call the shadow beliefs,
Hmm.
and shining a light on those shadows, claiming the value and the gifts that they've actually given us because they when we developed them, it was for a good reason. It was to
Hmm.
survive. It was to
Right.
feel loved. It was to, feel reassurance.
Right.
They no longer serve. In fact, they get in the way. So we
Hmm.
have to, dig down, resurface those, shine a light on them, and then use processes to help them reverse that thinking, which is usually around affirmations,
Right.
and then using those to build new synapses in the brain that go into the positive direction instead of the
Right.
negative direction.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because the majority of our population does not believe that we can control. We do control our own brain. Our brain's a tape recorder, right? And it's got these recordings. And
Yeah,
what you're helping men create new tapes
yeah,
and
yeah.
to
I don't think of it as controlling your brain. I think of it as managing.
managing is good. Yeah,
What you there
I think in
there is
control. I think in
hardwiring in the
control.
brain that you
Yeah,
cannot control. It
right,
just the
right,
synapses are so strong and so
right.
deep.
Yeah,
It's like if a glass, my water glass starts to fall off the counter, I can't not reach out and grab
right, right. Absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
you
No,
know,
yeah, no, absolutely. And
so
and the all those neurons that they're deep there. The longer that we've telling ourselves about negative stuff, they get stronger and
right,
stronger. So yes, and so
right.
obviously it takes longer to try to replace those
Yeah, yeah.
positive.
It takes a long time. It's like in AA, they say, well, how many years did you drink? And I said, well, about 15. Well, you can expect about 15 years
Hmm.
of
Right,
recovery,
right,
to get out of that.
right.
If you've been telling yourself that you're unworthy for 60 years or 40 years or
Yeah.
20 years,
Yep.
um, it doesn't just disappear overnight. And what I think of it is you have to reinforce the positive so much
Hmm.
that the negative starts to atrophy.
Yes. Yep.
Because any energy you put on trying to stop the negative belief makes it stronger. Any
Absolutely.
energy whatsoever going in that direction. So you simply have to notice it, breathe, and then tell yourself the positive.
Yep.
And that ignoring of the just like if you had a cast on your arm for a broken bone, if you left it on for long enough, all the muscles just atrophy
Hmm.
underneath. So
Absolutely.
leaving it alone is what allows that negative to atrophy
Yeah,
and go
it
away.
does. Yeah, the goal is to have it not grow. We don't want that
Yeah,
growing anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, give it no energy whatsoever. So
absolutely.
that's a lot of the work that I'm doing with men. So it's around what I use is the doorway of looking at a man's degree of integrity in his
Okay.
life. I think integrity is a great portal, a peep into the box
Mhm.
to see where, are you telling little white lies? Where are you telling yourself negative beliefs? Where are
Right.
you punching in your time card, early when you shouldn't be? When are you telling your kids you'll be home for their ball game and end up, staying late at work instead, or going to the bar on your way home,
Right.
or any of those things? And having the courage to list out and look at what are those places where I'm out of integrity, and then take them through a cyclical process of looking at each one of those and finding out what's the underlying belief that causes that behavior.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, I love. I mean, the core. Yeah, the core issues. There's too many things masking symptoms nowadays, and not diving deep into the core reason why we have those symptoms. So I'm very happy you
yeah,
are doing this
yeah.
for yourself and for other men, William. So I got two final questions I want to ask you. The first one
Okay.
is: you're sitting down with 7 to 10-year-old William, and you want to give him advice on life. What are you going to tell him?
Hmm. You are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and there's nothing you need to do to be loved or to be lovable, and you don't need to please anyone to be loved.
Wow. Thank you. That was wonderful. Ugh, okay, so you put on. Wow, that was
Are
great.
you're gonna start crying
You
now?
hit me, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right, so now you
yeah.
put a
I
different.
felt I call
Yeah,
them
I got goose. I got
angel,
goosebumps.
I call
Yeah,
them angel bumps.
angel bumps. I got angel bumps.
Yeah.
All right, so now you're sitting with young William, the businessman entrepreneur, and you want to give him some solid, helpful business advice. What are you going to tell him?
Mm. Well, it's kind of a cliche, maintain the work-life balance, because having money and getting to the top of the mountain is really empty if you don't have, your life and your soul and your family, along with you. But
Mhm.
I think the two biggest things I think are important is find a trusted group of conscious men who can compassionately support and challenge you. Doing this work is best done in the safe confines of a group. So Google a men's group in your area, find MKP, any place where you can sit with men and be real. The name of my business is Men Getting Real. And so you need to be able to be authentic in your life. And that's where freedom comes from, freedom of choice,
Right.
freedom of non-reactivity, and being able to respond
Mhm.
ably, which is what responsibility is. Um, so find a group of men. The other is find a mentor or a coach. Typically an older man who's been through the fire.
Yes.
Not just somebody who's been successful and risen to the top, but look for a man who's been through the fire,
Mhm.
and he has a blend of wisdom and humility.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So, William, with this conversation, the audience is going to want to get more of you. How will we find you?
Two easy ways. One is go to mensfreedomformula.com. Just those three words all run together, mensfreedomformula.com. And it'll give you an opportunity to download a 9-page e-guide that's called Take Charge of Your Life. It's what gets in your way and 3 powerful steps for getting what you want. So go to mensfreedomformula.com. The other would be to email me directly. It's william@mengettingreal.com. And what I like to do is I'll offer to men who listen to this, a half an hour totally free. Contact me. We'll set up a call, and we can talk. And I'll do whatever I can in that half hour, and you can find out whether or not you like how I work, and possibly do some more work with me after that. But William@mengettingreal.com.
That's great. Well, William, thank you for coming on. I'm grateful you're in my life, and you and I will work on building this
Yeah,
community
yeah.
stronger. So
Thank
thank
you,
you for
Drew.
everything you do.
I look forward to more. Appreciate the connection with you, and good to know that you're out there supporting men in this way as well. So thank you for your work.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, William. Have a wonderful day, and thank you, everybody. Be well. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.